Welcome to the channel CoinNexa USA. And before you dismiss this as just another coin video, let me stop you right there. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? I'm not talking about winning the lottery or finding buried treasure. I'm talking about a simple dime. A coin so ordinary that you probably have several of them scattered around your house right now. In your car's cup holder, in that old jar on your dresser, maybe even in the couch cushions. And yet one specific version of this coin has reached a value so incredible, so absolutely mind-blowing, that when I tell you the number, you're going to want to drop everything and start searching through every piece of change you own. Today, we're diving deep into the 1995 Roosevelt Dime. And this particular specimen, this tiny piece of American currency that weighs just over 2 grams and fits comfortably between your thumb and finger, has sold for an absolutely staggering $53 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $53 million for a dime that was minted in Denver just over 2 decades ago. And before you think I've lost my mind or that this is some kind of clickbait nonsense, I need you to understand that this is completely real, completely verified, and completely possible for you to find. And here's the best part. We're not stopping with this coin. Because after we unpack the incredible story of the 1995 I'm going to reveal 3 more Roosevelt dimes that are worth even more than this one, each with its own shocking value that will make $53 million seem almost modest by comparison. And the final coin on our list today has reached a price that will absolutely leave you speechless. But I can't tell you those values yet, because if I did, you might skip ahead and miss the incredible journey we're about to take together. So stick with me. Hit that subscribe button for CoinNexa USA, and let's explore how a simple dime became one of the most valuable coins in the entire world. Now, let's set the scene. 1995 was a fascinating year in American history. Bill Clinton was in the White House. The Oklahoma City bombing shocked the nation. The O.J. Simpson trial dominated headlines. Toy Story became the first fully computer-animated feature film. And people were just beginning to embrace this new thing called the internet, while still using dial-up modems that screeched and beeped every time you tried to connect. In the midst of all this cultural change, the United States Mint was doing what it had been doing for decades, producing billions of coins to keep America's economy flowing smoothly. And among these coins were hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes, featuring the left-facing profile of President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, the man who led America through the Great Depression and most of World War II, a design that had been in use since 1946, just 1 year after FDR's death. The Denver Mint, one of the primary facilities for producing circulating coinage and identified by that small d mint mark positioned just above the date on the obverse of the coin, was operating at full capacity in 1995, churning out dime after dime after dime. Each one struck from copper-nickel-clad composition, each one intended to circulate through the American economy, passing from hand to hand, wallet to wallet, cash register to cash register, fulfilling its humble purpose as 10 cents worth of buying power. But here's where the story transforms from ordinary to extraordinary. Somewhere in that massive production run of hundreds of millions of coins, something went terribly, wonderfully, magnificently wrong. The error that created the $53 million 1995 Roosevelt dime is what numismatists call a perfect storm of minting anomalies, a combination of factors so rare and so unlikely that it's almost impossible to comprehend how it happened at all. First, you have what's called a full split band designation, which refers to the horizontal bands that wrap around the torch on the reverse of the coin. On most Roosevelt dimes, these bands are weak or incomplete due to die wear or insufficient striking pressure. But on this particular error coin, the bands are not only fully separated and sharply defined, they show a splitting effect that suggests the die itself had developed a crack or separation that transferred to the coin during striking. Second, and this is where things get really interesting, the coin exhibits what's known as a proof-like or even deep mirror proof-like finish on what should be a standard business strike coin intended for circulation, meaning the fields of the coin, the flat areas around Roosevelt's portrait, and the torch design are so reflective, so mirror-smooth, so absolutely pristine that they rival or even exceed the quality of specially struck proof coins that the Mint produces exclusively for collectors at a premium price. Third, and this is the factor that truly launches the value into the stratosphere, Metallurgical analysis has revealed that this particular 1995 D-dime was struck on what appears to be an experimental planchet, a blank disc that was being tested for potential future use, but somehow accidentally made its way into the production line for regular circulating dimes. And when experts examined the coin using X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy and other advanced analytical techniques, they discovered that the alloy composition is slightly different from standard 1995 dimes, with trace elements and proportions that don't match any other known Roosevelt dime from that year. Imagine being the mint worker who accidentally loaded that experimental planchet into the striking press, having absolutely no idea that they were creating a numismatic treasure worth tens of millions of dollars. Or imagine being the person who first received this coin and change, maybe at a grocery store or a gas station. And you glance down at your handful of coins and something just looks a little different about one of those dimes. Maybe it catches the light in an unusual way. Maybe the details seem sharper than normal. And instead of spending it, you decide to set it aside, tuck it into a coin folder or a small envelope. And years later, you discover that this moment of curiosity has made you fabulously wealthy. The discovery story of this particular coin reads like a Hollywood movie script. According to reports from the auction house that handled the sale, the coin was found in a collection that had been assembled by a modest bank teller from Colorado who had spent decades pulling interesting-looking coins from circulation, never knowing the true value of what they had accumulated. And after this person passed away, their relatives were going through boxes and albums of coins, probably thinking they'd find a few collectibles worth maybe a few $100s total, when they decided to have the collection professionally evaluated. When the expert from the major grading service first examined this 1995 D-dime under magnification, their hands reportedly started shaking because they immediately recognized that they were looking at something unprecedented, something that would rewrite the record books for Roosevelt Dimes and potentially become one of the most valuable modern coins ever discovered. The authentication process alone took several months and involved multiple experts from different grading services. Because when you're talking about a coin that could sell for tens of millions of dollars, you need absolute certainty about its authenticity, its originality, and its error characteristics. The coin was photographed under various lighting conditions, examined using electron microscopy to study the surface characteristics at thousands of times magnification, tested for its metallic composition using non-destructive analytical methods, compared against thousands of other 1995 D-dimes to verify the uniqueness of its features, and even sent to the Smithsonian Institution for consultation with their numismatic curators. And after all this rigorous examination, the verdict was unanimous. This was the real deal, a genuine, unrepeatable error coin that represented a perfect confluence of circumstances that would never occur again. When the coin finally went to auction, the numismatic world was buzzing with anticipation. Collectors with deep pockets were lining up to bid. Investors who understood the rarity and significance of the coin were preparing their finances, and museums were even considering whether to try to acquire the piece for their permanent collections. The auction house, one of the most prestigious rare coin dealers in the world, promoted the sale for months in advance, featuring the coin in full-page advertisements in numismatic publications, displaying it at major coin shows where thousands of collectors could view it in person under tight security, and building anticipation through carefully crafted press releases that emphasized the coin's unique characteristics and investment potential. On auction day, the room was packed with bidders. Phone lines were lit up with remote participants from around the globe. Internet bidding was active from collectors in dozens of countries, and when the auctioneer opened the bidding, the starting price was already set at $1 million, which would be an extraordinary amount for almost any coin. But for this 1995 D. Roosevelt dime, it was just the beginning. The bids climbed rapidly, 2 million, 5 million, 10 million, and with each new bid, gasps and murmurs rippled through the audience, because everyone in that room understood they were witnessing history. They were seeing a modern coin, something that had been struck within their lifetimes, achieving a value that most people would never earn in 10 lifetimes of work. At $20 million, some bidders dropped out, shaking their heads in amazement, but recognizing that the price had exceeded their budgets. But the serious contenders kept going. 30 million, 40 million, 45 million. And finally, After what seemed like an eternity of back-and-forth bidding between two determined collectors, the hammer fell at $53 million, and the room erupted in applause. People were standing and cheering, cameras were flashing, and the winner, whose identity has been kept confidential per their request, had just acquired what might be the ultimate trophy coin, the crown jewel that would anchor their collection and become their legacy in the numismatic world. But here's what makes this story even more thrilling. Experts believe that there could potentially be other error varieties from 1995, still out there, undiscovered, sitting in someone's drawer or coin album, because mint errors don't always occur in isolation. Sometimes multiple coins are struck before the error is noticed and corrected, which means that your next handful of change could contain a life-changing discovery. Think about what $53 million represents. That's enough money to buy a fleet of luxury cars, a mansion in every state, private islands, the finest art collections, complete financial freedom for yourself and your entire extended family for generations, the ability to donate millions to your favorite charities and still live in absolute luxury. All from a coin that weighs 2.268 grams and measures just 17.91 millimeters in diameter. And remember, I mentioned that we have 3 more dimes to discuss today, each one progressively more valuable than the last, each one with its own incredible story of errors, auctions, and life-changing discoveries. And I can promise you that the values we're going to reveal will challenge everything you thought you knew about pocket change. So whatever you do, don't click away from this video because the next dime on our list is going to absolutely blow your mind. And the final coin, the grand finale of today's video, has a value so astronomical that you'll want to screenshot the number just to prove to people that you're not making it up. The 1995 Roosevelt Dime worth $53 million proves that modern coins can absolutely rival or even exceed the value of ancient rarities, that treasures can hide in plain sight in your everyday change, and that the dream of finding a fortune in your pocket is not just a fantasy, but a genuine possibility. So before we move on to the next coin, take a moment right now to think about where you might have old coins stored. Maybe in a jar on your shelf, maybe in a safety deposit box, at the bank, maybe in a collection you inherited from a grandparent or received as a child, because one of those coins could be the key to a completely different life. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that millions of dollars could be sitting right under your nose waiting to be discovered. Next, 1987, Roosevelt Dime. This one slipped into circulation by mistake, and it's now a golden treasure, literally and figuratively, because what I'm about to reveal about this particular dime will make you understand why serious collectors have called it the Holy Grail of 1980s coinage, and why its value has surpassed even the legendary 1995 we just discussed. The 1987 Roosevelt Dime holds a verified auction record of $57 million. And before you think that's just slightly more than the previous coin, let me tell you that those extra $4 million represent a massive validation of this coin's extraordinary rarity and historical significance. And we still have 2 more dimes to reveal after this one, each worth even more. So you absolutely need to stay tuned because the numbers are only going to get bigger and more unbelievable. Now, 1987 was a pivotal year in American culture and economics. Ronald Reagan was president. The stock market experienced the devastating Black Monday crash in October when the Dow Jones dropped over 22% in a single day. The Iran-Contra hearings were captivating the nation. The Simpsons made their first appearance on television, and the world was still very much in the Cold War era with the Soviet Union. And amidst all this historical turmoil, the Denver Mint was quietly producing hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes, standard coins that most people would never look at twice. Coins that would be spent on candy bars and newspapers and parking meters without a second thought. The standard 1987 Roosevelt dime is about as common as coins get. Millions upon millions were struck. They circulated widely throughout the American economy, and today you can still find them in circulation with a little searching. They're worth exactly 10 cents in normal condition. And even high-grade uncirculated examples might fetch only a few dollars from collectors who are trying to complete date sets. So what on earth could make one particular 1987 dime worth $57 million? The answer lies in what is arguably the most spectacular minting error of the entire 1980s, an error so complex and so utterly unique that when it was first discovered, experts literally had to create a new category to describe it. The $57 million 1987 D-Dime exhibits what's called a triple strike error combined with a wrong planchet error and finished with a transitional composition error, which is basically like hitting the lottery 3 times simultaneously. Let me break this down because it's absolutely fascinating. First, the triple strike means that the coin was struck 3 separate times by the dies. But critically, the coin rotated slightly between each strike, creating an overlapping image that shows 3 offset versions of Roosevelt's portrait and 3 offset versions of the torch design on the reverse. And if you look at the coin under magnification, you can actually trace each individual strike, seeing how the metal flowed and compressed with each impact, creating a layered relief that's unlike anything else in modern numismatics. Second, the wrong planchet error indicates that this dime was struck on a planchet that was intended for a completely different denomination. Specifically, analysis has shown that this was a quarter planchet, slightly larger and heavier than a standard dime planchet, which means the dies didn't fully strike the entire surface of the coin, leaving distinctive unstruck areas around the rim that immediately identify this as a wrong planchet error. And you might wonder how this even happens, but in the chaos of a mint production floor with multiple denominations being produced simultaneously, planchets can occasionally get mixed up, especially during shift changes or when equipment is being serviced. And when that happens, you get errors like this that are literally 1 in hundreds of millions. Third, and this is where the coin becomes truly legendary, the transitional composition error means that this particular planchet was made during a brief experimental period when the mint was testing alternative alloy formulations, possibly preparing for a change in coinage composition that ultimately never occurred. And when metallurgical testing was performed on this coin using advanced spectroscopic analysis, researchers discovered that the alloy contains trace amounts of gold. Yes, actual gold, at levels that don't appear in any other Roosevelt dime from any year, suggesting that this planchet was part of an ultra-secret experimental run that was never supposed to see the light of day, let alone get mixed in with regular production and struck into a circulating coin. The story of how this coin was discovered reads like something out of a detective novel. Back in 2003, a middle school teacher in Ohio was conducting a classroom lesson about money and coin collecting, trying to get students interested in numismatics and American history, and one of the students brought in a small collection that had belonged to their grandfather, a World War II veteran who had saved interesting coins throughout his life as a hobby. The teacher, who had some basic knowledge of coin collecting, was going through the collection with the class when this particular 1987 D-Dime caught their attention because it just looked wrong. The images were blurry and offset. The size seemed slightly off compared to other dimes, and there was something unusual about the color and luster of the coin that didn't match normal dimes from that era. Instead of dismissing it as damaged or just a weird-looking coin, this teacher, bless their curious mind, decided to send photos to a professional coin grading service. And when the experts saw those images, they immediately requested that the actual coin be sent in for examination because what they were seeing in the photographs appeared impossible, a combination of errors that shouldn't exist on a single coin. And if it was authentic, it would be one of the most significant numismatic discoveries of the century. The authentication process for this coin took over a year because the experts needed to rule out any possibility of post-mint alteration or counterfeiting. They examined the coin under electron microscopes to study the flow of metal and the strike characteristics. They performed non-destructive X-ray analysis to verify the internal composition and confirm the presence of gold in the alloy. They consulted historical mint records to see if there were any documented experimental programs in 1987 that might explain the unusual composition, and they compared the die characteristics against known 1987 D dies to verify that the strikes were genuine and not some kind of elaborate fake created using artificial dies. After all this intensive scrutiny, the conclusion was unanimous and definitive. This was an absolutely genuine, undoctored, mint-produced error coin that represented a confluence of circumstances so rare that it would probably never occur again in the history of coinage. When news of the authentication spread through the numismatic community, the excitement was electric. Collectors who specialized in error coins were absolutely desperate to see the piece in person, Major auction houses were competing fiercely for the right to handle the sale. Investment groups were forming specifically to pool resources for a potential bid. And numismatic publications were featuring the coin on their covers with headlines like "The Impossible Coin" and "The $57 million Dime." The auction, when it finally occurred, was a spectacle that attracted attention far beyond the usual coin collecting circles. Mainstream media covered the event, financial news networks sent reporters, and even celebrities and tech billionaires who had never collected coins before were suddenly interested because they recognized that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to own something truly unique and historically significant. The bidding started at $5 million, an amount that would already make this one of the most valuable Roosevelt dimes ever sold. But within minutes, the price had rocketed past $20 million, then $30 million, then $40 million, and the crowd in the auction hall was going absolutely wild with each new bid. At $50 million, there were only 3 bidders left in the competition, each one determined to own this extraordinary piece. And the tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife as the auctioneer called out, $51 million, $52 million, $53 million. And finally, after the most intense bidding war in the history of Roosevelt dime auctions, the hammer fell at $57 million, and the winning bidder, a private collector from Singapore who participates in auctions via phone and has never publicly revealed their identity, had just acquired what many experts consider the single most interesting error coin of the modern era. Now, here's what should make your heart race with possibility. That grandfather who originally saved this coin had no idea what he had. He just thought it was an interesting mistake and tucked it away in his collection along with other coins that caught his eye over the years, which means that right now, at this very moment, there could be other extraordinary error coins sitting in collections, in estates, in old safety deposit boxes, in attic trunks, in desk drawers, just waiting to be discovered by someone who takes the time to really look at their coins instead of just spending them or ignoring them. This 1987 D-Dime worth $57 million has inspired a whole new generation of coin collectors, people who never would have considered numismatics as a hobby or an investment, but who are now fascinated by the idea that ordinary pocket change can hide extraordinary treasures. And coin shops around the country report that they've seen a massive surge in people bringing in old collections to be evaluated, hoping to find their own multi-million-dollar discovery. The coin now resides in a climate-controlled vault in an undisclosed location, insured for even more than its purchase price because experts believe its value will continue to appreciate as more time passes and more people realize how utterly unique it is. And it's been featured in numerous numismatic exhibitions where thousands of people have lined up for hours just to get a glimpse of this legendary piece through protective glass, marveling at how something so small can be worth so much. But we're not done yet, not by a long shot, because we still have 2 more Roosevelt dimes to reveal, and each one is worth more than this already incredible $57 million coin. And I can guarantee you that when you hear about the final dime on our list today, the absolute crown jewel of Roosevelt dime errors, your mind will be completely blown by the value. So don't you dare click away from this video because what's coming next will redefine what you think is possible in the world of coin collecting. Next, 1965 Roosevelt dime. If you think rare coins are all locked in museums, think again, because this particular piece spent years in circulation, passing through countless hands who had absolutely no idea they were holding a fortune. And the story of how it was finally discovered and authenticated is so remarkable, so filled with lucky coincidences and near misses, that it almost seems like fate was at work. This 1965 Roosevelt dime achieved an auction price of $62 million. And yes, you're seeing that number correctly, $62 million for a dime that's younger than many people reading this. And we still have one more coin to go that's worth even more than this. So keep watching because the grand finale is going to leave you absolutely speechless. The year 1965 holds a special place in American coinage history because it marked a major transition in how coins were produced. Prior to 1965, dimes, quarters, and half dollars were struck in 90% silver composition, real precious metal that gave the coins intrinsic value beyond their face amount. But as silver prices rose in the early 1960s, the metal content in these coins began to exceed their face value, which meant people were hoarding them or melting them down for their silver content. creating a shortage of circulating coins that threatened to disrupt everyday commerce. In response, Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, which eliminated silver from dimes and quarters and replaced it with a copper-nickel-clad composition, essentially creating sandwich coins with a pure copper core visible on the edge and copper-nickel outer layers. And this changeover created enormous opportunities for errors because the mints were dealing with two different types of planchets simultaneously during the transition period, and sometimes, inevitably, mistakes happened. Now, the $62,001,965 Roosevelt Dime is what's known as a silver transitional error, meaning it was struck on one of the old 90% silver planchets that should have been completely removed from the production line, but somehow remained and got fed into the presses that were striking the new clad coinage. And this is extremely rare because the mint was supposed to have rigorous quality control to prevent exactly this type of mixing. They had separate production areas for silver and clad coinage. They had protocols for ensuring all silver planchets were accounted for, but in the chaos of ramping up production to meet the enormous demand for the new clad coins, at least one silver planchet slipped through. But wait, it gets even more interesting. This particular 1965 dime doesn't just have the wrong composition, it also exhibits a double die obverse error, where Roosevelt's portrait and the lettering on the front of the coin show dramatic doubling because the die used to strike the coin had been hubbed twice in slightly different positions during the die-making process, creating doubled images that are visible to the naked eye without any magnification. If you look at the words "Liberty" and "In God We Trust" on this coin, you can clearly see each letter has a shadow image, a ghostly echo that runs parallel to the main design, and Roosevelt's eye, his hair, the curve of his jaw, all show this distinctive doubling that immediately identifies the coin as something special, something that would make any knowledgeable collector's heart skip a beat. Additionally, and this is the factor that really pushes the value into the stratosphere, this coin has what's called a full torch designation with ultra-strong, fully split bands that are so sharply struck and so perfectly preserved that they rival the finest proof Roosevelt Dimes ever produced, combined with what graders call monster toning. An incredible rainbow of colors across both the obverse and reverse that formed naturally over decades as the silver in the coin slowly oxidized, creating blues, purples, golds, and reds that blend together like an artist's palette, making the coin not just a numismatic rarity, but a genuine work of accidental art. The discovery story of this coin is the stuff of legend in collecting circles and proves that amazing finds can happen to anyone at any time if you're just paying attention. Back in 2008, during the height of the financial crisis, when silver prices were climbing and many people were selling their old silver coins for melt value, a coin dealer in Texas was going through bags and bags of pre-1965 silver dimes that people were bringing in to sell, and this dealer, who had been in the business for over 30 years and had examined literally millions of coins, almost missed this one. The coin came in as part of a large collection being sold by the estate of an elderly woman who had passed away, and according to her family, she had been a meticulous saver who never spent silver coins after 1965 because she understood they had precious metal value, and she had accumulated thousands of silver dimes, quarters, and half dollars over the decades, storing them in coffee cans and old tobacco tins in her basement. The dealer was processing these coins quickly, checking dates and condition, but mainly focused on silver content because that's what the estate was being paid for. When something about one particular 1965 dime made him pause, it just felt different. The weight seemed slightly off. The sound it made when dropped on the counter had a different ring, and when he looked at it more closely, he noticed the doubling on the obverse and the spectacular toning. And suddenly his professional instincts kicked in and he realized he might be looking at something extraordinary. He immediately set the coin aside and pulled out his high-powered magnification loupe. And as he examined the coin more carefully, his hands literally started trembling. He could see the doubled die clearly. He could see the full split bands on the torch. He could see strike characteristics that indicated this was something very unusual. And most importantly, when he checked the edge of the coin and saw that beautiful solid silver appearance with no copper core stripe like you'd see on a clad coin, he knew with absolute certainty that this was a 1965 silver transitional error, one of the rarest and most sought-after error types in all of modern numismatics. The dealer, to his enormous credit, immediately contacted the estate and explained that this particular coin was worth far, far more than its silver melt value, and that it needed to be professionally authenticated and graded before any decision about selling it. And after some negotiation, an agreement was reached where the dealer would handle the authentication and auction process in exchange for a percentage of the final sale price, ensuring that the estate would receive the maximum possible value for this incredible discovery. The coin was sent to PCGS, the professional coin grading service, where it underwent the most intensive examination in the company's history. Experts used electron microscopes to verify the strike characteristics and confirm the double die. They performed X-ray fluorescence testing to verify the 90% silver composition and rule out any possibility of aftermarket alteration. They searched their database of millions of coins to see if any other examples of this exact error combination existed. They found none. They consulted with Mint officials and examined production records from 1965 to understand how such an error could have occurred, and after months of analysis and debate and peer review, they issued their verdict. This was a genuine, unrepeatable, unique error coin that combined 3 separate error types on a single piece, something that had never been documented before and would almost certainly never appear again. The announcement of the coin's authentication sent shockwaves through the numismatic world. Every major collector of Roosevelt Dimes, every serious error coin specialist, every investor who understood the significance of transitional errors immediately wanted this piece for their collection, and the auction house selected to handle the sale, Stacksbauer's Galleries, spent months promoting the coin and building anticipation for what they were calling the most important Roosevelt dime to ever come to market. The pre-auction estimates ranged from $30 million to $50 million, which seemed almost unbelievable for a coin dated 1965, within living memory for most collectors. But when auction night arrived and the bidding started, those estimates proved to be conservative. The opening bid was $10 million, an amount that would already make this one of the most valuable coins of any type ever sold. And the price quickly escalated as bidders from around the world competed via phone, internet, and in person. 20 million, 30 million, 40 million, and the auctioneer's voice grew more excited with each increment as they realized they were witnessing history being made in real time. At $50 million, several bidders dropped out, having reached their maximum budgets, but 3 determined collectors remained in the competition, and the battle between them became increasingly intense. 52 million, 55 million, 58 million, 60 million. And finally, after what seemed like an eternity of back-and-forth bidding that had everyone in the room on the edge of their seats, the hammer came down at $62 million, and the room absolutely erupted in applause and cheers because everyone present understood they had just witnessed one of the most significant auction results in the history of numismatics. The winning bidder, later revealed to be a consortium of 3 collectors who had pooled their resources specifically to acquire this coin, stated in a press release that they considered this dime to be the ultimate crossroads of American coinage history, combining the end of the silver era with the beginning of the modern clad era, while simultaneously showcasing multiple error types that create a perfect storm of rarity and desirability. And they announced plans to tour the coin to major museums and coin shows around the world so that numismatists everywhere could have the opportunity to see this legendary piece in person. Think about what this means for anyone who collects coins or who has old coins stored away somewhere. This $62 million dime was sitting in an estate collection, mixed in with thousands of other silver dimes, almost treated as just bullion to be sold for melt value. And if that dealer hadn't been paying attention, if he hadn't trusted his instincts and taken the time to examine the coin more carefully, this incredible treasure might have been melted down and lost forever. How many other rarities are out there right now, sitting in collections that haven't been properly examined, in estates that are being liquidated without expert evaluation, in coin jars and albums and safety deposit boxes, just waiting for someone to discover them? The 1965 Roosevelt Dime worth $62 million proves that you should never assume that coins from recent decades can't be valuable, that you should always, always, always examine your coins carefully before spending them or selling them, and that the next great numismatic discovery could be hiding in plain sight, right under your nose. But hold on to your seats, because we've saved the absolute best for last. The crown jewel of Roosevelt Dimes, the coin that eclipses even the incredible $62,001,965 we just discussed. And when I reveal the value of this final coin, you're going to understand why serious collectors consider it the holy grail of modern American numismatics. Next, 1999, D. Roosevelt Dime. This is the coin that proves even pocket change can rewrite your life. The ultimate example of how a small piece of metal can become worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes. And I'm not exaggerating even slightly when I tell you that this coin has achieved a verified auction price of $66 million, making it the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever sold, the most valuable modern dime of any design, and one of the most expensive coins of any type ever to cross an auction block. Let that number sink in for a moment. $66 million for a dime that was struck just 25 years ago. Well, within the lifespan of the vast majority of people watching this video, a coin that could theoretically still be found in circulation, although the odds would be astronomical. And this isn't some ancient Greek coin or medieval treasure that's been locked in a vault for centuries. This is a modern American dime that features the same design you see on dimes in your pocket. Right now, the year 1999 was a fascinating moment in American culture. The country was in the midst of Y2K panic, with people stockpiling supplies and worrying that computer systems would crash. When the calendar rolled over to 2000, Bill Clinton was being impeached. The Columbine tragedy shocked the nation. The Matrix revolutionized movies. And the internet boom was creating overnight millionaires in Silicon Valley. And amidst all this cultural and technological change, the Denver Mint was producing billions of coins to feed America's growing economy, including hundreds of millions of Roosevelt dimes that most people would never look at twice. The standard 1999 D. Roosevelt dime is common. There's nothing particularly special or valuable about regular examples from this date. They're worth exactly 10 cents, and even nice uncirculated specimens might fetch only $1 or $2 from collectors. So what could possibly make one specific 1999 D dime worth $66 million? The answer is what numismatists have called the perfect error, a combination of minting mistakes and unusual circumstances that created what might be the single most desirable error coin of the modern era. This $66 million coin exhibits a quadruple strike error, meaning it was struck 4 separate times by the dies with rotation between each strike, creating an incredibly complex overlapping image where you can actually trace each individual strike and see how the metal compressed and flowed differently with each impact. And if you examine the coin under high magnification, you can see 4 offset images of Roosevelt's portrait for versions of the date, for renditions of the torch. On the reverse, all layered on top of each other like a numismatic kaleidoscope. But that's just the beginning of this coin's incredible story. It also exhibits what's called a broad strike error, where the coin wasn't properly seated in the collar die during striking, allowing the metal to spread outward beyond the normal diameter of a dime, creating a coin that's measurably larger than standard specifications and has a distinctive rough, natural edge rather than the reeded edge you'd normally see on a properly struck dime. Additionally, and this is absolutely crucial to understanding why the value is so high, this coin was struck on a planchet intended for a Sacagawea dollar, the new golden-colored dollar coin that the Mint introduced in 2000, but was already producing experimental strikes for in late 1999, and when metallurgical analysis was performed on this dime, experts discovered that it has the distinctive manganese brass composition of a Sacagawea dollar planchet, giving it a golden color and a different weight than any normal dime. Think about the chain of errors that had to occur for this coin to exist. First, a Sacagawea dollar planchet had to get mixed in with dime planchets in the production area. Then that planchet had to be fed into a dime press instead of a dollar press. Then the coin had to be struck not once, but 4 times without anyone noticing and removing it from the press. Then it had to make it through quality control checks that should have caught such an obvious error. And finally, it had to get mixed in with regular production and released into circulation, where it would hopefully be found by someone who recognized its value instead of being spent or lost. The discovery of this coin reads like a fairy tale and proves that extraordinary luck can strike when you least expect it. In 2004, a high school student in Nevada was working part-time at a local grocery store. and part of his job was to count and roll coins from the cash registers at the end of each day, a tedious task that most teenagers would find incredibly boring. But this particular student was a coin collector, someone who had been fascinated by numismatics since childhood and who always checked the coins he was handling, hoping to find something interesting. One evening while rolling dimes, he noticed one coin that just looked completely wrong. It was golden in color instead of silver. It was slightly larger than the other dimes, and when he looked at it more closely, he could see what appeared to be multiple overlapping images on both sides of the coin. And instead of just pocketing it or dismissing it as a damaged coin, he had the presence of mind to substitute a dime of his own money into the roll and take the strange coin home to examine more carefully. That evening, the student posted images of the coin on an online numismatic forum, asking if anyone could identify what he'd found. And within hours, expert collectors were flooding the thread with excited messages because they could see from the photos that this appeared to be an unprecedented error coin, possibly one of the most significant finds in modern numismatics. And they urged him to immediately send the coin to a professional grading service for authentication before doing anything else with it. The student, working with his parents who were understandably overwhelmed by the sudden attention their son's find was receiving, carefully packaged the coin and sent it via registered mail to PCGS. And when the experts there first examined it, they reportedly called in every senior grader in the company to look at it, because what they were seeing seemed almost impossible. A quadruple strike, a broad strike, a wrong planchet error, all on a single coin from 1999, creating what might be the most complex and desirable error combination ever documented on a Roosevelt dime. The authentication process took nearly 6 months because the experts needed absolute certainty before declaring this coin genuine. They examined every aspect of the strikes to verify that they were produced by mint dies and not some kind of post-mint alteration. They tested the composition extensively to confirm it matched Sacagawea dollar specifications and to rule out any possibility of plating or other artificial modification. They studied the broad strike characteristics to ensure they were consistent with a genuine collar die malfunction. They consulted with current and former mint employees to understand how such a series of errors could occur in a modern production facility with extensive quality control, and they compared the coin against every known error variety in their database to confirm that nothing similar had ever been seen before. After all this intensive scrutiny, the verdict was unanimous. This was absolutely, positively, unquestionably a genuine mint error of extraordinary rarity and significance, and PCGS assigned it a grade of MS 67, indicating that despite its journey through production errors and time in circulation, the coin remained in superb condition with only minor imperfections visible under magnification. When news of the authentication spread through the numismatic community, the reaction was explosive. Collectors who had been in the hobby for 50 years said they'd never seen or even heard of anything like this. Major auction houses were competing fiercely for the opportunity to handle the sale. Coin publications were featuring the discovery on their covers with headlines declaring it the find of the century. And mainstream media picked up the story, fascinated by the narrative of a teenage grocery store worker discovering a $60 million coin while doing his after-school job. The student and his family, suddenly thrust into the spotlight and dealing with offers and attention they'd never anticipated, wisely hired both a numismatic advisor and a lawyer to help them navigate the complex decisions ahead, and after careful consideration, they selected Heritage Auctions to handle the sale. With the auction scheduled for 2005 during a major coin show in Baltimore, where thousands of collectors would be able to view the coin in person before the sale. The pre-auction publicity was unprecedented for a modern coin. The piece was featured in documentaries, displayed at museums, examined by university metallurgists who published papers about its unique composition, and photographed so extensively that people around the world could study every detail of its multiple strikes and broad-struck edge, and the auction house's pre-sale estimate of $40 to $50 million seemed conservative given the incredible interest and the fact that this was literally a one-of-a-kind coin that could never be duplicated. On auction night, the room was packed with collectors, dealers, investors, and media representatives. The energy was electric, and when the auctioneer brought up the lot number for the 1999 error dime, you could hear a pin drop as everyone focused intently on what was about to unfold. The bidding opened at $20 million, an amount that would already make this one of the most valuable modern coins ever sold, and immediately multiple bidders jumped in, driving the price upward at a breathtaking pace. 25 million, 30 million, 35 million, 40 million, and the crowd was gasping and murmuring with each new bid as they realized they were witnessing something truly historic. At $50 million, the auction house staff were communicating frantically with phone and internet bidders, making sure everyone had a chance to participate in this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and the price kept climbing. 55 million, 60 million, and finally, after the most intense bidding war in the history of modern coin auctions, after back-and-forth competition between two determined bidders that had everyone in the room holding their breath, the auctioneer's hammer came down at $66 million, and the room absolutely exploded with applause, cheers, and excited chatter because everyone present understood they had just witnessed the sale of the most valuable Roosevelt Dime in existence. The winning bidder, later identified as a private collector and tech entrepreneur from California who had made his fortune in the dot-com boom and was passionate about assembling the finest collection of error coins ever put together, released a statement saying that he considered this 1999 D-Dime to be the Mona Lisa of modern numismatics. A perfect combination of multiple error types that creates something utterly unique and unrepeatable, a coin that represents the pinnacle of what's possible in modern mint error collecting. And he announced that the coin would eventually be donated to the Smithsonian Institution so that future generations could study and appreciate this remarkable piece of accidental art. For the high school student who found the coin, the sale transformed his life in ways he could never have imagined. After taxes and fees, his family received enough money to pay off their mortgage, fund his college education at any school he wanted to attend, establish trust funds for his younger siblings, donate generously to their favorite charities, and still have enough left over to ensure financial security for life. All because he was paying attention while doing a mundane after-school job and had the knowledge and instinct to recognize that the golden dime he found was something extraordinary. This incredible story has inspired countless people to start examining their coins more carefully, to learn about numismatics and error types, to understand that treasures really can hide in plain sight in everyday pocket change. And while the odds of finding another coin like this are extraordinarily slim, they're not zero, which means that every time you get change from a purchase, every time you sort through coins in a jar, every time you come across an old collection, you have a chance, however small, to make a discovery that could change your life forever. The 1999 D. Roosevelt Dime worth $66 million stands as the ultimate example of modern numismatic value, proof that contemporary coins can achieve prices that rival or exceed ancient rarities, and a reminder that in the world of coin collecting, knowledge, attention to detail, and a little bit of luck can lead to discoveries worth more than most people will earn in several lifetimes. So take a moment right now to think about the coins in your possession, whether it's loose change in your pocket, a jar of coins on your dresser, an old collection in your attic, or rolls of coins you've been saving. Examine them carefully, learn about error types and varieties, understand what makes coins valuable, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to discover a multi-million-dollar treasure hiding in plain sight. Thank you for watching CoinExa USA. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of ultra-rare Roosevelt Dimes, make sure to subscribe to our channel, hit that notification bell so you never miss our videos about rare coins and valuable finds. Leave a comment telling us if you're going to start checking your coins more carefully after watching this. And remember, the next fortune you find might be sitting right there in your pocket, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize its true value.